Hello, Bill Johnson here with another Carbon Cub maintenance moment. Today a customer has come in wanting to replace the ignition coil packs. There's nothing wrong with these coil packs. However, to be proactive, he wants to go ahead and replace these with a modern version. If one of those fails, unless you can find a used one from someone, they are no longer available new. Now I do have a few used ones. If somebody's in a pinch and needs one to get home to their home airport, let me know, but they are not, you can't get them anymore. So if you're out somewhere and you break down and it's a coil pack, you're either gonna have to find a used one from somebody or replace them all out in the field. This is a kit that I will be installing with a new version of coil pack. You can't mix and match these coil packs because the mounting is very different between the old coil packs and the new coil packs. You can see these are mounted kind of vertically and those have bolts off to the side. So there's no way to really mix and match the coil packs. You need to replace them all as a kit with these new brackets. They also send hardware. And while you're doing it, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and replace all your plug wires. It's recommended to replace those every 500 hours. Service instruction 0038 talks about how to install this kit, and I'll make this video as well about how to install. And I think the price of the kit without the plugs is right around $1,000. And of course this is early 2023, so who knows what the price will be in the future. All right, so let's get started. Okay, per the instructions, the first thing I've done is label all of the ignition lead wires. If you're replacing these wires, you may not have to do that, but it's still probably a good idea. That way you can replace them one at a time and know where they go. And we are going to replace the wires in this video, so I went ahead and labeled them anyway. Now we need to pull them off the coil packs. You can see they're very much just like a old style spark plug. Just pull them right off. I used a Sharpie to label them, but the Sharpie does rub off a little bit. And then you're going to want to disconnect the actual ignition leads from your electronic module up here at the top as well, keeping track of which coil each of them came off of. I've previously went ahead and cut all the tie wraps. I do need to cut them on the wires up here. And then I will pull those off and we will take these ignition coils off of the engine. Okay, we got the wires disconnected. Now I'm unplugging the top of the coils. Just have to reach in there and lift up on them and pull them off the connectors like that. I did number them 1, 2, 3, and 4 just so I know which ones went to which pack across there. Now the real concern I have at this point is that all of these connectors need to be replaced with straight connectors. And Carbon Cub is notorious, Cub Crafters is notorious for not leaving any slack in any wires to allow for maintenance. And I really don't know why. Well, I guess I do know why. They're trying to save weight, but the little bit of weight savings is really almost detrimental when it comes to maintaining the aircraft. So I wish they would leave a little bit of slack, but we'll see. It may work out okay. If not, you end up having to replace this wire all the way into the ignition module, and that becomes very difficult and very expensive and time consuming. So hopefully we can find a way to get the slack that we need. I'm going to remove these bolts, and then that should come out of there. The ignition pack should come out. Let's unbolt the coil packs from the bracket. And there's two packs joined in the center here. Oh, there goes the bracket. And now the coil packs will come out just like that. The bracket is threaded on the back side, so that allows you to screw those right in there. Okay, there we go. Coil packs are removed. A little bit of some oil seepage around the sump gasket, but that's not uncommon. Okay, the instructions now to say to remove these two nuts, the forward carburetor mounting nuts, because the bracket we put on will use that as a mounting position. Now, as I prepared to mount the coils on the bracket, I noticed that the bolts wouldn't go through these holes, A and 4 bolts. I'm having to ream them out, or just drill them out with a 1/4-inch drill so the bolts will go through. So you may have to do the same. Oh, as you'll see, the 1/4-inch drill will not push through that. Then once you do that, the bolt will go right through. Okay, I drilled out the holes so the mounting hardware now fits properly. The instructions say to go ahead and mount the inner coils before you mount these brackets on the engine. The inner coils sit slightly back from the outer coils that will then sit slightly forward. So these long tabs, you'll see on the bracket, there's a long tab and a short tab. The long tabs need to be on the outer part of the assembly. Make sure with these bolts, put the head in from this side. If you don't put the head in like this, the existing bracket will hit the nut. So make sure the orientation of your hardware is correct, or you'll run into trouble. On the inner ones, it goes like this. The outer ones, the head of the bolt's here and goes out like that. So the head of the bolt is on the bracket. And once you get all your hardware, these are AN 412 volt bolts. Once you get the hardware on both brackets and both coils, we will torque these. We'll torque these to 80 inch-pounds. 7/16" wrench and socket. Now we will preset the torque wrench to 80 inch-pounds. hold that and video at the same time. Okay, so that's how they will go onto the engine, just like this. Now let's mount the brackets on the plane. So you'll see that one slides up behind there. Again, make sure your orientation is correct, otherwise the nut will hit. If that's the other way, the nut will hit over here. The drawing shows it correctly, so you just got to make sure you're following the drawing. There's not a lot of clearance there. Putting the nuts and the washers on the bolts. It's kind of awkward here. Trying to stay out of the line of fire of the camera, but now, one good thing to do before you start working on anything engine related is that I always pull the breakers, the ignition breakers, and the emergency backup battery breaker as well. Okay, I'm going to finish tightening those and then I will torque them. But as I was saying, before you work on anything engine related, it's always a good idea to pull your backup battery and also pull the breakers down below as well, so there's no chance of any kind of spark. It's just a good safety precaution. The next step, I've mounted the two inner coil packs. We have it mounted onto the existing bracket. Now we need to install this stabilizer bracket. You need to take the nuts off the front of the carburetor, and it goes up and supports the bottom of that other bracket just to give it a little more stability. Once that's done, we'll mount the outer coil packs in the same way that we did the inner coil packs. And then we will need to get our ignition wires onto the coil packs and then start replacing our plug wires. Okay, I have the nuts off the carburetor. The bracket slides up over. They send you a new lock washer. Install that on both sides. You remove the washer that was there, but you do put a lock washer back on. The bracket takes the place of the washer. And we'll do the same thing to the other side and tighten it all up. The this reinforcing bracket that goes down to the carburetor has been installed here, mounted here, and then a couple of bolts and nuts up here. So now we're ready to install the remaining coil packs the same way we did the inner coil packs. And you can see why you need to wait on installing those, because you need to get behind there to tighten up these bolts on the bracket. So you need to follow the order that we've been going in here to make it all work out the way that we need. The next big question I have is, will these wires coming from the ignition module reach these coil packs, particularly this outer one? And my fear is the answer is no, but we will find out here shortly. I think this one here is going to be fine. These may be fine. This is going to be the problem. If there is a problem, we will find out. Because if you need to replace the wires all the way back to the ignition module, that goes in behind the boot coil on the right-hand side, and it's not easy to get to. Which is why on the EX3 that we're building, if you look at my videos, there's a removable boot coil panel that we've installed to make fixing things down the road easier. We intend to fly that plane pretty hard, and inevitably there will be things to fix, but we are making it so that it's easily repairable, which I think is what you want if you're going to be flying the plane to remote locations. If I can get the right socket here, it's still on my torque wrench. If you're going to be flying the plane to remote locations, you definitely want to be able to fix things easily. We'll come back and torque those in just a minute. So we've maybe sacrificed a little bit of beauty for ease of maintenance and repair. For example, the boot coil will be, you'll see a panel on the side versus most of them are very smooth, but I guess you have to decide what's important to you. And being able to fix something easily and quickly and efficiently is important to me, particularly when you're away from your home airport and you're trying to get somewhere. Which is another reason to go ahead and proactively change out these coil packs. Like I said earlier, in case you missed it, you can't get the old coil packs anymore. I do have a few to help somebody out if and when the time comes. But I would recommend, if you have the old coil packs, find you a spare. And even if you have the new coil packs, I would carry one of these coil packs in my spare parts kit, since it's not something you're going to pick up locally and you won't be waiting on it to arrive. Okay, I will torque these, and let's see, the torque wrench is still set on 80 inch-pounds. And once these are torqued, we will take a look at those wires and see if they're going to be long enough. All right. Well, that's the first one. That's the second one. That's the third one. Now the problem is they want you to replace these connectors with straight connectors. For some reason, apparently they are not having good reliability with these others, I would assume. But I'm gonna have to find some slack, because the straight connectors will come out the top, so you need enough slack to be able to come out the top. So we're gonna have to look and see if there's some slack in the system we can get. And clearly this longest one, well, surprisingly, the one I was most concerned with probably has enough slack. Well, there you go. We'll see if we can find some slack in the system. Hopefully there's a little bit. And if there is, we now have to replace these connectors with straight connectors. So the wires are gonna have to curve and come straight down versus these connectors, which are 90-degree connectors. There is a service bulletin to check these to make sure they're not loose. And these seem pretty good, so I need to study on that a little bit and see. I think if we use those, we would be okay. If we replace them, we're gonna have to find some slack. So I'll take a look at that and we will determine what to do. Well, the decision was made to go ahead and replace these RG400 cables. So we ordered some from Lightspeed. 6 foot length is plenty. And we ran them into the plane. Well, let me show you through the firewall. Still need to tie wrap all that up when we're done. And then up under the instrument panel to the Lightspeed units. We connect there in the back. So not a terrible job. We left plenty of slack up behind the boot cowl here in case we do have to fix a connector in the future. You don't have to replace the whole line. So 3 of the connectors are done. These 3, I'm going to do the final one over here and I'll show you how I do that. The connectors that come with from Lightspeed, I want to talk to you about those for just a second. They send you some connectors, and you can see it's a yellow connector and a red connector. The red connector is for the center of the coax and yellow is for the shield. But the first one I did pulled out pretty easily. And you can see, look, and the metal stops here on particularly the red, the crimping metal that crimps around the wire. The yellow goes out further. So I don't know what brand of connectors these are. I don't like them. I prefer the amp connector brand that are used in certified aircraft. And you can see the difference in the connector. So this, notice how much additional metal crimp space you have compared to that or that, because that's just plastic out here. So these are much higher quality, I believe, and these are amp brand connectors. So I'm using these to replace the red. The yellow seems to be okay, and then I put a little piece of heat shrink on here. So this is the one that pulled apart, that was in the plastic pulled out, the wire pulled right out. So I'm not going to use these red ones that came with the kit. Instead, I'm going to use better amp. I will use the yellow ones. So we'll go through how to put those on the wire that's here on the plane. Okay, the first thing I do is I measure 1.5 inches back on the RG400 cable, maybe just slightly beyond it, and I mark it. We then take the coax cutter. You just want to cut, you don't want to cut through the braid, just cut through the insulation. About 1 turn around is all it takes. And then we will strip that off of there. Then we will double check to make sure I got the full 1.5 inches. Doesn't look like it. Yeah, we need a little bit more off of there. Then we can loosen up the braiding. There's two layers of braiding. There's an inner and outer. Now some people will try to create a little hole here and feed the inner cable out through that hole. I find that to be very difficult, particularly on this RG400, where it's such a it's a double shield. You see that shield and an inner shield, so there's actually two shields on the outside. So what I'll do is take a little scratch awl and just gently start pulling it apart. Just feeding a couple of strands at a time. If you get too many, it makes it hard to pull, so you don't want to overdo it. And you just pull, keep on going until we're all the way up there to the top. And you'll lose a couple of strands, but it's okay. Now when I plug it in, I know I'm going to want the thin wire on this side and the thicker, or the coax, the shield, on the right hand side in this video. So I will kind of bring it off to that side like that, and then twist it back up. Cut off the very end. Now you want to get some heat shrink on here. The key thing to remember is that on these cables, this shield is not a ground. Many times on coax it is a ground, but it is not a ground. It is a voltage carrying wire. So you don't want this shield to rub or touch anything, or else you will impact the ignition. So you need some heat shrink over that. I'm going to slide that piece. Well, I'm going to put the bigger piece on first. I actually double heat shrink this just because of the importance. Just like that. Then I'm going to put some heat shrink on the shield there. Like that. Let me go ahead and strip the now use a very good quality crimping tool, and this is the tool that I use. It's from Aircraft Spruce. Just pushed all the way in. Crimp it like that. Double check, give it a pull test. Everything feels good. Again, I got my high quality amp red connector. I don't like the ones that came in the kit. They don't seem like they're very good quality, but I'm sure they're fine. A lot of people use them, so I don't want to say anything bad, but I prefer this connector because that is a high quality amp connector. Okay, and then they'll plug in like that. So the next thing I'll do is pull this heat shrink down to about here. Let that shrink up on there. And then we'll bring the other piece of heat shrink down. Just again to double shrink it here. And then we will put a piece over that. Clay is making an appearance in the video here, if you saw him waving. That is Clay Travis. Any complaints and concerns can be sent to Clay Travis. That phone number, blah, blah, blah. All right, then just heat shrink that around there just to, again, protect it. And then we will route that and plug it in. The wires put on. I'm gonna put some insulation here. We don't want that rubbing, but I'm gonna do that, but everything is wired up. And now I need to give it a test run, but it's pretty windy, so I may not be able to do that till this evening, but if the test run goes well, you should be able to pick it up tomorrow.